This is Pavement Black.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Pavement Black, the official podcast of the National Asphalt Pavement Association. My name is Richard Willis.
And I'm Brett Williams.
And I remember as a kid loving construction equipment. I remember reading the story of Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel and wishing I could do that one day. And the reality is, there are a lot of kids that never get the opportunity to experience the joy or the excitement of what it could be like to operate some of this heavy equipment in construction. I think it's interesting that as a kid, there's a lot of people that have that love and have that passion, but here we are in the construction industry and we're needing people. We need those kids who had that passion to come and be a part of these asphalt companies today.
I think across my career and the opportunities I've had to operate equipment, whether it's going to a Caterpillar training school or being at work and being able to use some of the equipment at past places that I've worked. But I think today I'm really interested to hear how simulators can give that experience to people that maybe haven't had the opportunity to go to a training or be at a work site where they could use a piece of equipment and learn about the operation of it.
Yeah, and so to help us learn a little bit more about how some companies are using simulators or workforce simulators to recruit and retain and train, we've invited Ray Rodriguez from CW Matthews to be a part of this podcast today. Ray, can you give us a little bit about your background and what CW Matthews does?
Yeah, so I'm Ray Rodriguez. I am the Division Vice President of Human Resources for CW Matthews. I've been with the company going on 30 years, been in the construction industry probably a little more than 35 years. Grew up around it. My dad was in high-rise construction and worked my summers in college as a laborer or carpenter's laborer and just worked my way up. But CW Matthews is a heavy highway contracting company. We're based in Marietta, Georgia, just north of the city of Atlanta. We primarily cover the state of Georgia and we have some operations in Florida as well. Been around since 1946. We do pretty much everything along the road, from grading and structures work to paving, concrete paving. We produce our own asphalt. We have 27 asphalt plants throughout the state, and we build roads.
Awesome. We're specifically here to talk about workforce simulators today. And the reality is most people, when they think about simulators, they think about sometimes like the rides you can ride at an amusement park that would simulate you being in an airplane or something like that. What are workforce simulators related to construction? And could you explain how y'all use them a little bit and what they do?
Yes, to give you a little backstory on how we got into this. Several years back now, probably 7-8 years ago, we invested in a simulator. It was a Caterpillar simulator. It had a track hoe, a dozer, and a motor grader module. And we were using it to go to schools to do career fairs and try to entice students to come to our table because everybody else was giving out candy. And we figured out that kids were really excited to see something new and play on the machine. But the reality was it was just a toy. And around that same time, we realized that we were struggling. Everybody was finding people, but we were looking for different ways to find or fill our workforce needs. And one of my peers was in a meeting and someone said, look, high school kids in the construction programs, they're a captive audience, but you need to come see them when they're in school because when they walk across that stage, they disappear. And so at that time, we decided we were going to bring on somebody to recruit in schools. And we had one person that joined us or went into the role and was doing okay, but it really wasn't his passion. And he came to me and said, hey, I'm not really, this is not my thing, but I met a teacher at a high school and I think this is the guy you need to help lead your recruiting. So we hired a gentleman in to be our high school recruiter. And when he got here, he saw the simulators and he said, this is neat. Can we train people on this? Because he was actually a high school construction teacher and they were teaching carpentry and electrical and plumbing in these schools, but there was nothing that taught kids what we like to call horizontal construction or linear construction. And so he started playing with it and reached out to Caterpillar, and the timing was just perfect. Really, it was Cat Sims And they just brought on a person to establish some curriculum. And so Jeremy, my recruitment manager, basically partnered with Cat Sims to create a curriculum that we could teach our employees to learn how to run equipment. And of course, the feedback we got from the folks in the field and the guys that have done this forever is that'll never work. You can't teach someone how to run a piece of equipment in a training room. And we worked with Cat for about a year to establish the curriculum. We vetted it, we used it, and the first class we ever put through it, the one stipulation was they could never have sat on a piece of equipment, and they could not touch a piece of equipment until training was over. We put a group of 10 students through, employees through, then took them out to the field to see what they had learned. And amazingly, they jumped on the machines and were able to start loading trucks and trenching and doing things with an excavator immediately with just some very slight instructions from more skilled operators. And so we were excited about that, but realized that spread across the state, it was very hard to scale. And so that's where we decided maybe we should try to incorporate these into high school programs. And that's where we are today, where we've got programs across the state, about 25 schools that have simulators, and they teach track hoe and dozer with intentions of adding pieces of equipment down the road. I know I've said a mouthful, so I don't know any specific questions I'm happy to answer or talk about how we do it or how it works with the schools.
Yeah, that was really fascinating and really appreciate all that detail. I was curious when you're talking about recruiting and retaining workforce and how important that is to our industry. Can you maybe share a little bit about the positive impacts that it's made by incorporating simulators into your operations?
Yeah, one of you said it earlier, and it's true. These kids, that they see careers that they want to be a part of when they're kids, right? You want to be a professional athlete, you want to be a fireman, you want to be a police officer or a doctor. They're kids that want to be construction workers, that they want to build things, that's what motivates them. And so what our approach to the schools is we are in elementaries, middle, and high schools, not just the schools with construction programs, but schools that feed construction programs, because we're trying to find those kids and paint the picture that you can be very successful in construction, and that coming out of one of these programs, you can have a very comfortable life, a very successful career. And we actually do all the training for the construction teachers across the state on how to utilize the simulator program. So we bring them all together during the summer. Even the new schools that are getting simulators, we bring those teachers in as well. We go through the training. And this year, we had several teachers, and one in particular that stood up and said he had taught for 30 years. And the simulator training program was the single most impactful thing he has done in his whole teaching career. And it speaks volumes to the kids that were getting missed, that they were told that construction was a fallback plan, that it wasn't a career option. And we kind of shattered that concept. And we have kids that are extremely successful with us, moving up the ladder within the company. We have, I think, 5 foremen now that all came through these programs, and they're 21 years of age, making a really good living, building a career with us, and they're loving it. And so the impact of showing these students at a young age that there are opportunities in construction and that you can be successful just like anybody else has been a huge impact on the kids that are deciding to come this direction. We knew that if this program, these high school programs succeeded, that you were going to have more students coming into the industry than one company could hire. And the legislature doesn't want to fund a program for one company either. So the idea was, we very early on decided that we needed to bring in partners that, so we're currently, it's primarily the highway construction industry right now, but we're bringing in the utilities industry, we're bringing in the mining industries, because all of them have certain, that they use equipment, and we want there to be more jobs and more opportunity for these students so that more students want to join these programs. And so we realized that early, and I have no problem sharing what we're doing or talking through. And one of our primary competitors here in the state, they hired hired a high school teacher to do exactly what my person is doing, to go into the schools, to work with these programs. And more contractors across the state are realizing that recruiting out of schools is really, it's a very viable pipeline. You think about the student that comes out of high school, that comes in at an entry level position out of high school with maybe a little bit of experience in a construction program. They've got things in order. They're not coming to you at 28 years old, ready to get married or ready to settle, get their life on track. And the entry level pay is not exactly what they need to get by. And then they're busy fretting about, how do I get more money now? Where a high school student can live at home till they're 20, be on their parents' insurance till they're 26. The amount of money that the contractors can afford to pay them as they learn seems like a whole lot more than you're going to make working at a Starbucks or fast food restaurant. And they grow with the company, and as their responsibility grows, their pay grows, and they build a great foundation. And so for us, that whole idea of recruiting out of the schools, it just helps us, when you get them early and young and you teach them and you take that mentoring approach, you just have more success because you're helping them, you're guiding them along the path. And so that's the approach we've taken, and our industry partners and our competitors see the same value and are going the same route. And we've hired, I think, 150 high school students over the last 3 years, full time out of high school. And with these 25 construction programs, if you're graduating 20 kids each year, that's 500 kids coming out of construction programs that very likely will come into industry. And that number will continue to grow because as cohorts grow and these programs succeed, you'll see more than 20 kids coming out of some of these schools.
So I know you said CW Matthews is mainly their footprint is mainly in Georgia and recently expanded down into Florida. But do you know of any other states that are have a similar program, or could you see this technology being used to recruit the next generation of our industry in other places as well?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm not familiar with any other state that's currently using the simulators to the level that the state of Georgia is. We had a really perfect scenario that worked out for us to get these in the construction programs that already existed. But I'll tell you that we've had dozens of states and several come visit us to see these schools. I actually hosted a company out of Utah, a company out of Charleston, that are all excited about what we're doing and are trying to get them in their school systems. But anything else, there's some bureaucratic processes that you have to get through to get these programs approved and pathways that have to be established. So I would say we're on the cutting edge, but I do see it coming quickly in other states because it's working. We're seeing the growth of these programs in these schools. Our local high school, Marietta High School, got new simulators this year, and before the class ever opened, they had a full class and enough students on the waiting list to fill 2 more classes. And the first 6 schools that we had, they started with 15 to 20 kids. One of the schools had 150 waiting the next year to get into these programs. It works, and it's fortunately the state of Georgia has seen the need, and the legislature has stepped up and funded these programs, and they're seeing the success that we're having. And we just got a lot of folks excited. And Jeremy or myself, we're contacted regularly from other states that are trying to do it. The challenge is getting all the pieces in place. You can buy the simulators, but if the school doesn't have a pathway, if the Department of Education isn't supporting it, there's a lot to get it done. We just had the perfect storm. And of course, having someone that came from the educational background, he understood their language and was able to bring the 2 worlds together.
Is that what you would say is the critical component, is having that person that was part of the team that could really speak the language? Or what do you think? Because you touched on the challenges of bringing this technology to schools. I'm just curious if you have any insights of like how you can help move that or work on these programs to try to create those pathways.
I think the two critical pieces are somebody that can speak to the program and speak to the need and understands the school system enough to understand what they're looking for in these career pathways. In the state of Georgia, there's been a lot of career academies that have been established over, I'll say, the last 5 to 7 years, because for a long time there was this focus on all kids needed to go to college. And they've, I think, finally realized that there are opportunities in trades, whether it's in IT, construction, the medical field, that you don't have to go to college to be successful. So having someone to speak to that, but I'll tell you where the real help comes from. I guarantee you in every state legislature, there's at least one, if not dozens, of legislators that work in the construction industry. They know the challenge we're facing. And if you can find that person and that champion in the legislature, they can help push through the changes that need to come to get your program in place. We were fortunate. We had a couple legislators that saw the vision, understood the challenge, and helped us get the funding in place to get these programs. And so I think that having someone on the legislative side and somebody who can champion the idea to help them present it to the rest of the legislature, that's where your success will come from. And then the departments of education and the school systems, the demand will drive it. We have 25 schools across the state now. And every time we go somewhere and show our program, another school says, I want this. Well, so go to your school board, tell them you want to get, you want to apply for the grant. It really is, there's a lot of moving pieces, but a lot of schools and states already have construction programs. So it's really just inserting that pathway. But one of the things that makes the program successful is, again, the interaction with the students. And so we are actually hiring students in work-based learning opportunities. Basically, they go to school half a day, they work half a day. And in our industry, the hazardous occupations regulations limit what these students can do. And a lot of companies are resistant to bringing on these students. One, because how productive are they going to be? Or in some cases, their insurance won't allow it. But in the state of Georgia, we've got some leniency in that regard, and it allows us to work these students in construction programs and these workplace learning opportunities, as well as even summer internships. Now, we have to control what they do and keep an eye on them and treat them a little bit different. But the reality is, when they spend time with our people and they spend time in our industry, they want to come back. That connection, the relationships that you establish in your work environment, that's what gets them hooked. And then the technology and the opportunity to do something that they actually excites them, that they love, is just a bonus. I think one of the things that's made it very successful is, again, the industry embracing the idea of giving these kids a test drive. Do they have the work ethic? Do they have the right mindset and attitude? And do they like what we do? Because if they don't like what we do, then maybe they need to choose something different. And the earlier you understand that, the more successful you're going to be in building your career.
So you mentioned that the legislature was able to help you. What did that look like? Was it a line item in the budget? You mentioned grants schools could apply for. Just a little bit more detail so that people listening might have a better idea of what to actually go to the legislature as an ask would be good.
So we helped put together the curriculum and determined what it would take to teach a classroom of roughly 24 students. It takes about 4 simulators, as well as a teacher's workstation and the actual supporting curriculum that is online to support the teaching on the simulator with the curriculum in the classroom. And so we approached the state and basically showed them what it would cost to outfit a school with the necessary tools to do it. And we made an ask. And so they put together a grant. And again, this gets into sort of the sausage making process of school systems, but there are these grants that come out for construction programs, and schools can apply and ask for the money. And you can buy something, but it has to be at least $200. And so an example would be, you could buy a demolition saw, which is useless in the classroom, but you can't buy a toolbox to put it in. But if you need 20 hammers at $10 a piece, because one hammer doesn't cost $200, the grant won't pay for it. So there's all these processes that the government has in place. So the state's carved out a different grant for this program to purchase the equipment and the software that it takes to teach the schools. And CAT puts together packages based on the types of equipment that you want to teach. So we've got track hoe and dozer. We're looking to add other pieces of equipment. One of the areas that we see a huge shortfall is in asphalt paving. And CAT and other simulator companies have approached us and said, look, what do you need? And we said, we need paving simulation. It is a huge part of our company, and we want to be able to teach kids how to pave so that they can come into the industry and help us grow our paving. And so right now they're in the development phases of construction simulators for paving. But essentially that's how we started. We went to the state legislature with this is how much it cost. Here, we sent out the grant application once we had a funding amount that was approved, and schools apply through the grant, and they have to answer a bunch of questions about the space they're going to teach it in, who's the teacher, what interest do they have in the program so far, just a bunch of specific questions. And then there's a team of industry professionals that score these applications along with the Department of Education. And basically the highest score gets the first grant and down the line. And we've done that for 3 years now, growing the program from 6 schools initially now to 25 across the state. And again, it's been just a tremendous asset. Now, one of the things that we realized, and might sound a little bit hard to believe, but I can't hire 100 kids out of 25 schools. I don't have that kind of need. And one of the biggest issues that we had was we're developing these programs across the state, and we need a viable pipeline for these students when they come out. So we were very quickly engaged with our competitors, our industry organizations, the Georgia Highway Contractors Association, to get our subs, our competitors, everybody that's in this industry behind this idea. And so now these schools that have these programs are not only supported by C.W. Matthews, but they're supported by some of our closest competitors. And we partner with them to do capstone projects where we bring in the equipment at the end of the semester so the students can take their final exams, just because a rising tide floats all ships. And we realize that there'll be plenty to go around. But when we move out of an area, we don't need a school to die because there's not a pipeline to hire there. So maybe we move out and our competitor moves into the next project, and so they start picking up where we left off, or vice versa. And so we have a huge support system for this program. And that's the other thing that the state legislature has seen, is that our association is supporting these schools financially, because the grant only covers the simulators and the tools to teach the class. But as dumb as it sounds, if they need a shelving system to put the equipment on, we pay for it. There was a school that didn't get a piece of the grant application that they needed, which was the teacher's workstation. The Georgia Highway Association paid for it so that these schools, and we're supporting them with our people, with our time and our equipment, as well as financial help. And in that support of this program, I think the legislature, and it's been said to us on multiple occasions, if all the programs across the state that did things like this supported it the way we have, they would have huge success in all of these programs. But our program is thriving, and it's because of all hands approach. We're not trying to keep it just for Matthews. We realize that we're going to put our best foot forward, and if it's not good enough, we need to do better, because we're going to hire that kid and make him want to come to us over our competitor. And we're not afraid to compete, because that makes sure that the best come to us.
I really appreciate all that detail. I was curious if we could circle back. You touched on the technology with the simulators and the need for some new technologies. So I'd be curious if you could maybe talk about, over the time that you've had experience with these simulators, what you've seen as far as progress with the technology, as well as, like you mentioned, places where you think the technology could even be improved or expanded upon what's available today.
So the technology has certainly advanced, primarily in things like graphics. The machines now are so realistic. They They're fully virtual if you would like to use the virtual reality goggles. So it's one of the challenges with the technology is virtual reality doesn't always work so well with some people, like motion sickness. So we don't use it a lot, but it is there. The graphics have changed, the interface. One of the things that's neat is our partnership with Caterpillar every year at that same teacher training. Caterpillar's there to listen to the teachers, and teachers tell them what they like and don't like about the technology, and they change it. And so they're adapting to their customer, making it more user-friendly for the teachers, for the students. But this technology is pretty cool. It has motion platforms. So when you sit in one of these simulators and you overload the bucket or load out over the side of the machine, it's going to lurch with you and it's going to bounce and it's going to feel like you're about to flip over. And if you put the virtual reality goggles on, it not only feels like it looks like it, and you feel like you're tumbling to the ground. And so it really sets a very realistic. The simulators we use have all OEM controls. When you sit down in that machine, it is the exact same controls you're going to see when you sit down in a live Caterpillar machine. Those are that's one of the things that really helps it translate, because that muscle memory of how to use the machine, and when they sit down in the seat, the technology is exactly the same. And they're using things like machine control, basically for Trimble and TopCon. Those features are being added to these simulators so that the students understand how to use the grade control systems. But the technology is just continuing to evolve. And like I said, they sat down with us and we talked about needing the paving simulation. And I know that they're currently working on it. They've come back and shown us some iterations of what they're doing. And ideally that will continue to grow the technology even more. But it's with the 3D, the motion platforms, the OEM controls, everything about that simulator is just like sitting on the live machine. And even our students tell us that the simulator is harder than the actual machine, which is what you want, because when they get out there, then it's an easier transition to the live machine.
You mentioned that the team there at CW Matthews has a podcast. I was curious, is that something you could share a little bit about what you're talking about or where that's at?
Yeah, so we do an internal podcast primarily to talk about things that are going on within the company, but also to just share exciting things that are going on. Our most recent podcast, we were awarded a historic, the largest project we've ever been in the state of Georgia, largest project we've ever been anywhere. But at the time when it was awarded, it was the largest project ever awarded in the state of Georgia. And then 5 minutes later, they awarded one 4 times bigger. So it was exciting for about 5 minutes, but no, it was a huge job. And a lot of our employees aren't aware of it or don't know the backstory or what the project is. And so we talk about those things, and we bring in our employees to tell their stories, whether it's, we had an employee that came in to talk about overcoming addiction, and we've had outside guests from the industry, from Caterpillar, from the highway contractors, from the Department of Natural Resources. But it's really more informative for our employees to know the exciting things that are going on within the company, the holidays coming up, and just anything exciting that we're doing at the time. But it's also to face with the name. A lot of people don't know the backstories of some of the key people here at Matthews. And it's neat to have your senior vice president of a division say, look, I came in as a laborer. And yeah, I ended up going to college, but I worked my way through college. And today, here I am. I built bridges for this many years, and now I'm the vice president of this division, to show our employees that it doesn't matter where you start. And so that's what our podcast is focused on, really more about our employee stories and what's going on within our company.
Ray, we really appreciate you spending some time with us today and talking about not only what CW Matthews is doing, but what the state of Georgia is doing to really support the construction industry and get more people in the pipeline. It sounds like an amazing program, and I wish y'all continued success in advancing it in the coming years.
I appreciate you guys having me. Hopefully this will spread across the country. I think it's a great thing.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. So at the end of that conversation, one of the things I'm really left with is this is bigger than one company trying to pull off something like this. It is going to take the industry. It's going to take educators seeing the importance and having the desire to do something like this. And it takes funding. It takes outside money to be able to provide the schools with the equipment that they need to really make this happen. And so I think that's one of the things that really impresses me about what happened in Georgia is they had the ability and the forethought and the understanding of what is it going to take to pull off something like this, to make this good thing happen for the industry. And they were able to rally all the troops that they needed with the vision that they had to actually execute it and make it happen.
Agree 100%. I think the piece that I grabbed onto is just how this technology continues to evolve, get better, become more realistic, and really help that coming workforce hone their skills and be ready for that challenge of going out there and building our infrastructure. And I think that's a powerful component of bringing the next generation into our industry and really being able to capitalize on technology, on the fun of building infrastructure and being part of a team that's constructing our highways and roads. And I think that's an exciting piece of the story today. Thanks for listening to Pavement Black. Visit asphaltpavement.org/podcast to find more episodes, suggest a topic or guest, become a sponsor, or learn more about Napa. Pavement Black is produced and copyrighted by the National Asphalt Pavement Association. Music by Colleague. As always, thanks to the dedicated workforce connecting diverse communities all across America.